Hello and welcome to the Book Business and Brand Building Summit. I'm your host, Jesse Krieger, and I am joined today by a very interesting individual, a new friend, Dave Chesson, founder of Kindlepreneur, and in fact, an Amazon algorithm specialist. Dave, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing really good. Thank you so much for having me here.
My pleasure, man. And just for everybody that's watching's entertainment, why don't you tell us where we're having this interview from on your side of the world?
Well, I'm all the way in Sri Lanka. I work for the U.S. Embassy here. So I do that by day, and I do Kindlepreneur at night.
Pretty interesting lifestyle. I know when we talked a little bit, you get to travel the world on behalf of the U.S. taxpayer and get to work on your book stuff on all of your off time. Not a bad gig.
Yeah. Absolutely. I actually wrote my first book while sitting on board a South Korean warship patrolling the DMZ. So it just goes to show you can write a book from anywhere.
Right. Did you put that in the prologue or in the foreword, or is it more of just a point of personal enjoyment that's where it was written?
No, just one of those points of personal interest. It was I just discovered that whole self-publishing thing, and I was all excited. And so sure enough, I had a mission. I'm like, I'm just going to bring my laptop with me. And it was great.
That's awesome. And there's a lot of stuff I want to cover with you today. And, before we really jump into it, maybe you can just give everybody that's watching this that may not be familiar with you or Kindlepreneur a little bit of a background and how you wound up, in the book business, at least on your off hours, and what you're up to. And then we'll go into some of the more tactical questions that I've got in store for us.
Sounds good. Well, I started as a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, and the problem was, and I love the job. It was great. It's great serving, but I kept getting orders that were separating me from my family, and I'm really a family guy. I love being home with my wife and kids. I've got 2 daughters and a son, and we're all big Star Wars fans, so it's really fun. We have a lot of great times, but I was missing out on like half of that. Just about every other year or so I was gone. So my latest set of orders were sending me to South Korea, like I just mentioned. And again, it was a 2-year orders without my family. So, there was a time where my wife asked me, she's like, well, what's your definition of success in the military? And it should have been something like, to become an admiral. But that wasn't it. I didn't really have one. I was just kind of going down the motion of just following the career progression. And I was basically set up for failure just because, you don't become an admiral by just thinking, hey, I'll show up to work today, and maybe I'll get it. It just doesn't happen. So that's when I started realizing that I needed an exit strategy. I needed something that would allow me to be home with my family. So I started learning online marketing, and I had a lot of failures, but I call them failing forward moments. And finally, I found out that I really enjoyed niche websites, building websites that, people would type in at Google, and my niche website would rank, for this really niche keyword, and I would get this traffic. And at the time, I was making money through AdSense and affiliate links. People would click on advertisements and I'd get paid. That was cool because, I would go out on a mission for like a month and come back and find out I had made money while I was gone. It was a business structure that didn't require me to have to be there. It wasn't like drop shipping where you get an order and you got to immediately turn around and send it. It wasn't creating a product and then having to push every second. Like without you working hard, the product wouldn't sell. And that's just something I couldn't do. So with niche websites, it was great because I could put in the work and I'd get paid later, when I'm not even working on it, when I'm sleeping. So it was something that could fit into my lifestyle. But the problem though was that I was only making like $50 to $100 per website. And it was taking me a couple of months just to make one website. And I was like, okay, I can't scale this. And I don't really want to scale this to the point where I'm making $10,000 a month. I mean, that's like tens of the hundreds of thousands of websites I'd have to create and maintain, and I'm just like, no. So the only way to really, do well online and to be able to create a great income is if you have a product that you're able to sell, whether that's courses, whether that's, you invent something, whether that's creating a product physically. But again, I was in South Korea, so it's not like I could do the creating a product. But I just spent this whole, couple of months writing on a subject, creating a website, all centered around this one topic. And I realized, why not just write a book on that same topic and use my websites to send people to my book. And when I did that, it was a major game changer.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like almost at the point where you've written that much content to fill up a whole website, it's probably wasn't a big leap into turning that into a book or to taking that same mindset and playing it forward into the books, was it? And so...
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was afraid that, my book was basically just about all the information you could find on the website, just centered in a book. And I thought people would be ticked off about that, or they'd be like, I'm not buying that. I found all the information I need on this website. But the truth is that when you look at it, and I would rather pay $2.99 to have all the information laid out, in sequential order, right? From chapter to chapter, than to have to click around on somebody's website looking and hoping I'm going to find it. And at the same time, a website, you can only really view that on, your phone, but that's not very comfortable to read 30,000 words. But, to put it out, have it formatted in a book, have it on your Kindle, your iPad, when you're in reading mode, when you want it. So people enjoy that. And when I was able to make that connection, the books sold great. But more importantly, the books had a continuous sales. It wasn't this high of, woo, I'm making money, and then all of a sudden Amazon's like, 2 months later, I got consistent sales. And my first book, which I wrote 3.5 years ago, makes me $2,000 every month, and it has for the past 3.5 years.
What is that book, out of curiosity? Share it with everybody.
Well, the book actually centers in language studies, but the thing about my tactic is that I like to look for niche subjects, so subjects that people are typing into Amazon, but that they're not finding that much competition. So what really allows me to maintain that is two things. One, sending external traffic, continuous external traffic to my book. So it shows Amazon that my book is always relevant, even if Amazon's not promoting it. And number two is that, people don't know about the subject, or people aren't, there isn't this horde of writers cranking out books every second trying to be the next one ranking #1 for it, which really exists. And that's really key, to the success, especially for a new author, is having books that people search for, but you don't have a lot of competition. And then the second thing is ranking really high in that search result, so that your book comes up #1 when somebody types in that search result. So.
Yeah, that's definitely what I want to dive into with you on this interview. And it's fascinating, on this summit, there's such a broad spectrum of author styles. I mean, there's some people that want to share their personal story and the lessons they've learned and help shorten the learning curve for other people that are trying to undertake a similar adventure or learning experience. Then there's others that are taking a more of a scientific, analytical approach. And I think it's pretty safe to say that you fall more on that side, which is equally valid from my perspective and entirely fascinating. So, maybe you can give us a little bit of an overview about your process on how you sort of back into the next book that you're going to work on, or even how you were starting with the niche websites and parlaying that into becoming a book, and how you tie those two together to the extent that you have, which is what it sounds like driving consistent sales month over month for the books once you've gotten this whole sort of configuration and system in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's two ways that I'm finding that people are being successful in selling books. Okay, the first one is that they're already famous. They have a following, or they're well known for something. They get the market media attention. I mean, just insert any actress or actor, and if they wrote a book, it would probably sell more copies than you and I, not because it's a great book, but just because they've already have a following. They have established fans. Same thing with Stephen King. His name is the biggest pieces of word on a cover because he's Stephen King. Like, people just buy it because of him. And then you got other people that are just well known in that industry. Gary Vaynerchuk could write a book about choosing shoes in the morning, and he'd still sell more copies than me because he's Gary, right? But they have the luxury of writing about whatever they want because they have the following. No, for most of us, that's not us. So there's the second category, which I think is more important, and that's really book discoverability. So in this case, you're not famous enough to be able to create, this marketing fervor over the book. I mean, there are some people that get lucky, but we instead need to be able to write things and get them positioned so that people will naturally find them. So to do that, there's a couple of ways. One is making sure that the book you write is, like we said, something that people type into Amazon, something that people are searching for, okay? Not just a general broad subject of like, we'll say resume, okay? Like say you want to write a book on how to write resumes, okay? There's a lot of books on resumes. In this case though, you might be able to find out that, well, in Amazon, people are typing in like nursing resumes or resumes for doctors or resumes for teachers. And if you're able to say that, hey, there's like 1,000 people a month typing in nursing resumes and there's no book specific to a nursing resume, then you've basically found a very discoverable topic of which to write and to maintain constant sales. The other thing is that you find ways to make sure to drive traffic, like I was talking about, from outside sources. So if you're able to find out that 10,000 people a month are typing into Google nursing resumes, and you're able to create a website or you're able to create a YouTube video or something that ranks up there, you can continue to stream that 10,000 to your Amazon book, and that will only help to propagate your book higher in the rankings.
That's a great introduction to the topic. And, I'm curious, and perhaps people watching this are curious as well, how do you really get an idea for the search volume or for how much people are searching for a term? I know nurse resumes might just be a hypothetical example, but, what's a little bit about your process that can bring to light different opportunities that lend themselves to being more discoverable on Amazon and online?
Well, one thing I like to do is have a competitive advantage. So I usually start with Google, and I'll go through, like, for example, Google has some free tools like the Google Keyword Planner, or I use other tools like Longtail Pro or KW Finder. What these three tools that I just listed do is that they'll tell you how many searches per month people make on Google for that particular term, and then it will give you better suggestions of more niche ways of putting it. And then, what you do is you look at that and it's like, wow, there's hypothetically, there's 10,000 people a month typing in nursing resumes or resumes, and then it will say something like there's 2,000 a month saying resumes for nurses. You see, there's different ways to put the terms. And so I can go through, and for me, I'm able to look and see what's competitive. Like, is there any way that I'll ever rank for, resumes for nurses? Most cases, when you start to get really niche like that, the answer is yeah, you can. So once I've done that, I'll actually create a website, and I'll see how many people are coming to it, and I'll actually promote other books on Amazon. And that gives me validation, because if people come to my website and they're buying these other resume books, then now I know that I have a type of market that will convert into book sales. And that's when I'll write the book. But the other thing too, though, is for those of you who are like, I can't do this SEO website thing, that's cool. Don't worry about it. I like to go into Amazon, and you start typing in the term, and Amazon will start to do a suggestion. So you start typing the word in. Say you put nursing, and then you stop, and it will say nursing materials, nursing courses, nursing textbook, nursing whatever. And those are all things that people or you have typed into Amazon. And so it's basically telling you, hey, here's the other things we think you might be typing in based off of other people. So I'll start going through and I'll look at those. And the key thing is you want to see if there are books that are actually really targeted towards that term and that they're making money. So if you type in, resumes for nurses, and you find there's one book that has like a title, or it's in the the subtitle, or it's in the description, or all these other things. So it says exactly that. And its Amazon bestseller rank is really nice. Like, that number, it's less than 100,000 or something, and it's consistently less than 100,000. That's validation that people are buying that book. It's even better validation when you see that's the only book in town on that subject.
So you would like to find a topic or an area where at least one or some people have written a book and it's showing to be a consistent seller, as opposed to finding something that's just a wide open, perhaps untested topic? Or do you skew even further towards the other way of saying, like, maybe there's 5 or 10 books squarely on this topic, but it seems like a number of them are consistently selling by looking at their rankings and looking at that over time? Is there a sweet spot in terms of how much competition or how many other books there are on a narrowly defined topic before you really think like that's the one I want to go for next?
Well, what I love to see, I mean, my moment, when I come to one of these subjects is when I see that there's like maybe a couple of books and I immediately know that every one of them's got like a visible mistake, like they've either got really bad looking covers, their titles are very robotic, they're keyword stuffing, and then to see that all of them are making consistent sales. That means that there's a hungry market and they're having to eat, they're having to buy this book crap, that it's like, oh man, this will be easy. And that's another thing too, is I'm never going to get into a book that I can't do better. If the 3 successful books are just immaculate, why would I go in there and kind of ruin the sanctity of that subject? But you'd be surprised how many opportunities are out there. Here's a really good example, and I'm pretty sure the numbers are still there. There was this big craze, I think, 2 years ago for Evernote, books on Evernote. Yep. Everybody's writing how to use Evernote, whatever. Essentials, I think, was one of the really popular books. And all of a sudden there was it went from 8 books on the subject to 50. Okay. People had discovered it, but they discovered it years ago. Well, I was doing the research and I found out that there's something like a couple thousand people a month that type in Evernote for project managers. And then there's Evernote for students and Evernote for writers. These were 3 topics that there was no book specific to that, but in Google, there was a lot of people typing in those exact words. And I couldn't find an article or anything that actually helped, Evernote for project managers. So it was one of those projects that I was like, oh man, I'm going to put that on the back burner because that'd be great. Never got around to it. So if any of you listeners out there are looking for a good book idea, you might want to check that out. So
hot tip right there from Dave. I didn't mean to cut you off, but were you?
No, yeah.
Oh yeah. So essentially by doing, a basic amount of research and finding an area where it's either a hot or a trending topic like Evernote. I saw this myself with one of the first books that we published, which is for Airbnb hosts, called Get Paid for Your Pad, and how interest in Airbnb continued to grow. The overall user base, the host base, the people that actually rent their houses out on Airbnb has continued to grow. And accordingly, the book sales have remained consistent and in fact grown over time without a huge additional effort. We just released an updated and expanded edition. But it's interesting to see in hindsight, because I didn't take such an analytical approach in working with the authors and publishing the book, but seeing how when you sort of merge in with a trend, and ideally one that's growing and ballooning, like Evernote became very popular and became a super hot topic. I've seen a lot of productivity blogs and people write about it, but then identifying that niche that is perhaps being unserved of specific use cases. And I think that's a pretty good illustration for what sounds like part of your process that leads you to actually going to market, creating a book and releasing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, for you, you've had success with an Airbnb book, and you've got this stronghold in that market. You're one of the originals. So there was, you've proven to Amazon that you belong in the top, for those searches, which really should help you to have sales consistently, which is great. But for a new book, say some author that's out there is like, oh yeah, I know, I got so much information on Airbnb. You're going to have to really work hard to get up to the top with so much competition that now, might exist. But, one thing for those who are successful in a topic or those who are trying to enter into a topic, I'd say niche down. I mean, even Hal Elrond of The Miracle Morning is doing that as we speak. He and Steve Scott and Henri Corder just published a book together that's The Miracle Morning for Writers. So, we're talking about morning routine, writing routines, efficiency and effectiveness in writing, like these terms he's now niched down to instead of just efficiency, effectiveness as an entrepreneur and whatever the Miracle Morning was by itself. And so he's now starting to branch out and have Miracle Morning for this type of person. And the reason why that's incredible is because, I mean, just imagine yourself, right? You're trying to figure out this Evernote thing. We'll go back to that example. It's a program, you kind of, you should be using it. You've heard good things about it. You go to Amazon and you go to look to see what's out there. Now, guess what? What if you're a teacher, okay? And wow, that's actually what I was going to use this for. Now, you might have seen the other 20 books on Evernote, but the one that's written just for you, that one's probably going to get the sale, right? I mean, that's going to be the one you're going to end up with because it's written for you. That's sales conversion right there. And that's not having to beat everybody else. You just did it by saying, I'm not going for everyone. I'm going for this pre-existing smaller group.
I love that. And I love you use the example of the Miracle Morning for authors. We actually have Steve Scott and Honore Corder as guests on the Book Business and Brand Building Summit. So a very appropriate reference. And I've seen what they're doing too. In that case, it's kind of interesting because like Miracle Morning is sort of now like an umbrella brand, or that made its mark. And it's almost like a hub and spoke model, at least from my perspective of you've got that beachhead established and now Miracle Morning for authors, Miracle Morning for all of these other applications. And for sure, if I'm an author and I'm looking for writing tactics and how to really master my day and be consistent, and if I see Miracle Morning for authors as opposed to other general productivity or writing books, then likewise with the Evernote example, it's from a personal perspective going to grab my attention more. And at least if that gets your mind share just long enough to click and start reading the description, then it seems like you're sort of hooked, right? If you're just casually browsing, that's one thing. But if you go in and you read the description, it's got good reviews, then it's almost like, why not? A book is a low enough price point item where you can buy a bunch of books in a day, and that's pretty good for authors.
Yeah, and case in point, I never bought the Miracle Morning, but I did just buy the Miracle Morning for authors.
That's good. Steve and Honore will be happy to hear that, and so we'll help. He's not on the summit. So now so let's just play this all the way through. So now you've found a really good niche to focus on, and perhaps there's an application that's not being met with another book in the market. What are sort of your next steps that lead you to the actual creation and release and promotion of the book?
Well, the good news about writing a book where there's a pre-existing market and not major competition is that the success of your book doesn't exactly depend on this giant book launch, the one where you get it on promotion sites, you put it up for free, you do all this hustle, you beg your friends and family. The good thing is that once you've got it up there, all I do is just focus on getting it ranked #1 for that search term. I mean, I validated that search term is very profitable. Then I also validated that I could beat the other books in the rankings. Statistically, and this is something that my team at Kindlepreneur and I came up with, is that if you're ranking #1, you should expect 27% of all of the people who type that search term in. And then it quickly drops to, I think it was 13 or 12 at #2, and then it kind of evens out at about 8-7%. And we've got an article that's coming out in a couple of weeks that actually shows how we came up with all those numbers. So it wasn't willy-nilly guessing. Like I said, I'm a statistician. I'm a huge math nerd. I'm not gonna lie. But can you see that? I mean, like if you get your book to rank #1 for something where people type in 1,000 times into Amazon, and that's not that hard. I mean, Amazon gets millions and millions of people a day. You can expect 270 clicks every day. Now, whether or not you turn that person into a sales conversion depends on things like, a good book description, a great cover, testimonials in your editorial review section, and reviews. I mean, these things convert the person. So just because you rank doesn't mean you make the sales, but at least it's getting you that 270 clicks, what is that, per month? And that's consistent so long as you stay up there.
That's pretty good. I mean, I'm reminded of, I don't know if we had talked about this before, but way back in the day, I had an SEO business as well. And I think a lot of things have changed, but I remember seeing those heat maps of a search results page where it showed the intensity of clicks on different, you know what I'm talking about, on different different search results. And it seems to be a similar thing where, like, obviously on number 1 and 2, there was the most intensity of clicks. And then on search results like 2 to 3 and then 3 to 4, it dropped off pretty consistently. And then after that, it was just, I wouldn't say a wasteland, but there certainly wasn't nearly the amount of activity as if you're in the top 3 or 4 results. And that was on search pages. So it sounds like perhaps a little bit of a similar distribution on Amazon. But I'm curious how, well, to the extent you want to share and talk statistics and math stuff, how do you sort of deduce those numbers and come up with those percentages? Maybe you can give a preview of what you're about to put on Kindlepreneur.
Sure. So we actually started with that case study. There was a company that spent like thousands and thousands of dollars to track the click rate of people on Google. So we started with their analysis, and we said, okay, but one thing I love to think about, between Amazon and Google is they're both search engines, right? I mean, that's, Google basically takes a search query, and based off of whatever information, they'll rank, websites, 1 through 10, I think it is, or 1 through 12. I can't remember if it's 10 or 12. They'll rank them, and, there's that. With Amazon, they're doing the same exact thing. Their algorithm is actually called A9. They have a name for it, which is kind of cool. So the A9 algorithm will go through, take that search query, and say, out of all of these books, this one should be ranked number 1, 2, 3, and all the way to 14. Okay, so we started to pull out the data, the differences between the two, and say, okay, well, look, if Amazon has 14 and Google only has 10, then therefore that means there's a higher concentration of clicks, on Google than there would be for Amazon. So we need to distribute that more. The other thing that we did as well was that, we also went through and understood that in Amazon, you're more of a buyer's market. I mean, who clicks on just one thing? If you type in red shoes, you're probably just scrolling forever looking, right? So people on Amazon will go deeper into Amazon than on Google. I mean, how many times have you ever gone to the 3rd page on Google, right?
Not very often. Maybe if I'm trying to find, if I'm trying to track the result, the rankings of a website of mine, and it's not on page 2 or 1 yet. But yeah, that's exactly. That's about it, which is kind of funny because, you always see like there's 68 million results for your search query, and research shows, people aren't looking at more than 4 or 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, exactly. And then not even on pages, probably 5 or 6 of the websites that are ranked. I mean, who goes down to the bottom most of the time? The good thing about Google and Amazon is that the algorithms are really good. They really do a good job of putting the right stuff up there. So you don't have to scroll that far before you finally find the answer or the product. So that's why it's really important to be right there at the top. So kind of to round all this out, right, we talked about making sure that you're able to write for something where there's a pre-existing market. It's much easier that way. And then finally, the important part is once you've done that and you know that people are typing this in, getting your book to the top really helps out. And to get to the top is a really important factor. And I like to, when talking to people about how they get their book higher, I use the acronym STARKS, like, the Starks of Game of Thrones, right? Winter's Coming. And that's STARKS. And the S is subtitle, the T is title, the A is about, the R is reviews, the K is Kindle keywords, almost forgot it. And the final and the most important piece is the S, which is the conversion, the sales conversion. Okay, so the STA and the R to an extent are all about making sure, and the K, sorry, is making sure that Amazon, the algorithm, knows that your book should show up for this search result, okay? It sees the title and it sees the subtitle, so it's like, okay, well, if the person types in how to be a cook and the title is how to be a cook, then that's probably the book that they're looking for, right? Same thing with subtitle. About, or the description of the book, there are a lot of people that would argue with me and say, no, I've just copy a sentence in the description and then put it in the algorithm and it won't find the book. And I tell those naysayers, the algorithm doesn't work in sentences. Who writes a sentence in Amazon, right? So their algorithm works in key little blurbs of words. And if you do that little test, you'll notice that it will give you nothing because it won't find anything. But it will literally strike out all the insignificant words like of, the, a. And it will just show, like, did you mean these words? Like how and cook, you know? So there is the description. And then reviews they do two parts. Reviews, if the person types in the words in there, you know, the algorithm is like, you know, hey, the customer even used this word to describe the product. It must be. But it also is a good conversion metric, and it also beefs up your rankings if your book is loved by customers compared to being hated. Amazon doesn't want to put the most hated book in the world at #1 for a really, you know, searchable term. And finally, there's the 7 Kindle keywords that you get to choose. So that's for telling the algorithm this math calculation that your book deserves to be in there. But the most important way to get your book ranking #1, okay, for that search term is the sales conversion. But to expand that, really it's called the type to click to buy conversion rate. So the idea is if your keyword is how to cook and people type in how to cook and they scroll down all the other books and they find your book and they click on it and they buy it, that's the greatest indication to Amazon that your book should be #1 or higher above all the other ones that have low sales conversions. Because Amazon wants to make the most money they can. They don't want to put a poorly selling book over a very, very good selling book because they're losing out on money. So some of you guys might be sitting out there being like, well, that's great, Dave. That's good theory. You know, how does one make that happen, right? And I'd say that on a book launch, one tactic that I highly recommend is that, you know, and I don't know if you know Carol Tice, makealivingwriting.com. You know, I had her do this and it was...
I haven't connected with her yet.
Okay, yeah. Well, this worked like gangbusters for her. You know, you have certain people that you've built a connection with, you know, fans, people who would go the extra mile to buy your book. I told her, look, you know, make sure that when you publish this book, go ahead and tell those people that you know would buy the book anyways. Just tell them, instead of giving them the link, say, type in the keyword. You know, I think in hers it was how to blog or how to write a blog or something like that. And so they would type in the keyword, how to write a blog, and they would scroll down and find her new book, and they'd purchase it. And literally within like 24, 48 hours, her book was ranking #1 in Amazon for how to write a blog, which is very competitive. It stayed up there for a really long time because, you know, Carol has, you know, thousands of fans. I mean, she's a big name in the freelance writer world. But I mean, that's a really great injection to get you up there. Now,
sorry, I just want to underscore that that's a really hot tip. That's actually something that, I mean, I'm learning through all of these interviews as well. And that's, you know, a situation where we've done book launches before. We'll just give the link or embed the link in a text, in an email, or in an ad. But getting a core group of fans, or as many as possible, people that are already in your audience, to go and do a search, find the book, click it, and then buy it through that mechanism, you're seeing that really plays into the that S in your Stark's, what's the right word for it? In your Stark's framework?
Yeah, tool, acronym.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there's going to be people who are saying, well, that's gaming the system, and, you know, Amazon's going to hit you for that. No, here's the beautiful thing about that algorithm, okay? So you get the 20 people to do it, and you get ranked. But if nobody is going to buy your book for that search term, you drop. Like, that's it. So you get up to the top, and if your book doesn't belong up there, if it's, you know, it's an ugly cover, it's bad, you know, sales copy, poor reviews, all that, you disappear. So don't worry to all those that are feeling as though this tip is going to ruin Amazon. You write a good book on that subject and you'll enjoy that little tip. You write a bad book on it and you might get an injection of sales, but you're not going to be up there for long.
I love it. I love it. A super actionable advice. And Is anything else you want to point out about the Starks acronym that, people watching this can take away and perhaps even update books that you already have or play into the next book that you're going to release in terms of optimizing each of those components, the subtitle, title, description?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. For those of you guys who have published a book before, revisiting your book and looking for better keywords, better things to rank for, will only increase the reach of your book. There have been a lot of people who have just made a tweak to their keywords and have seen, an increase in sales. Now, it's not a magic bullet, again, but you'd be surprised, what can happen. I mean, let's go back to resume, right? There are many different ways that people say the word resume, such as, CV, curriculum vitae. If you didn't know that and you wrote a book on resumes, you're missing out on a chunk of people. And I'm sure that every resume book out there isn't going after those terms as well. So just making that one little switch, you've just increased the amount of people that will find your book, and that means more sales. And when more sales happen, ranks go higher, right? So very important to think about, and definitely worth the time looking into it. So validate your idea, find those keywords, and drive them hard inside of, legitimately inside of your book, and you'll only increase your reach.
Well, I'm curious now, with your books, taking this sort of analytical approach to its ultimate conclusion, like, do you go back and update your description, subtitle, play with different variables after you've actually published a book, or is the amount of research that you do beforehand sufficient to sort of plant your book there, publish it rather, and then sort of leave it be and let it run and move on to the next subject?
Well, I'm a really big fan of book idea validation before writing it. So I spend a lot of time trying to figure out, what's going to be worth my time, right? So I haven't actually gone back and tweaked any of my books or so because, it's usually worked in the right process. And but the other thing too, though, is that I'm sure that if I went back to them, I might be able to find more reach or something. But I think the tactic is really good for books that need new life breathed into them, trying to smooth out the edges or so, I don't want to play with it if it's working, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. And it's generally more exciting to tackle a new project, and that might be personal preference. But I just was curious to see, if you're tracking and analyzing the books that you have put out, if you notice changes in sales or something, if you go in and look and reevaluate the landscape of that market and that niche.
Yeah, I actually have all my books listed with booktracker.com, and I think that's TRAKR.com. And it will pull all the information, all the sales on CreateSpace, Kindle, KTP, Smashwords, and Drafted Digital. Pull all the sales data, and every day I get an email from them letting me know how many copies I sold and how much money I made that day. And that's really good for me to just be able to make sure that there isn't a giant dip in sales, that one book all of a sudden just flubbed, So that's me being able to have the finger on the pulse and ensure that everything's tracking. And so far, everything's tracking. But if I hit a crisis mode, we'll see what happens.
But what is the opposite ever true, where you're like, oh, holy cow, sales just spiked like 5x, and then that's probably a more exciting issue to look into than if sales dropped?
Yeah, the good thing though is with what I do is it's been pretty consistent. I mean, it'll range from like $150 a day to $400 a day. So haven't seen anything outside of that range. But yeah, I think once it said I made like $40, and I like freaked out. I was like, whoa, like what? And I went to Book Tracker, and immediately I found out they had like this little caveat on the bottom, like, our sales reporting is wrong today. We're trying to fix it. We'll be back. I was like, okay, good.
All is still well in the world.
Woo! Yeah. So, but
I mean, in a few cases, like Amazon. One time we had a book that was picked up for a promotion in Amazon Brazil, and they had like reached out and had a little bit of communication with them beforehand. But then all of a sudden, when that promotion started, it was like, whoa! It's just sales spike through the roof, and I was like, look, anytime you guys want to do that for any of our other books in Brazil or any other country, just go ahead. You don't even need to ask me. And so
Yeah.
I think maybe it's a little different approach with something that's been so well analyzed and positioned that it's just a consistent seller, as opposed to like seeing opportunities where something can meet the market at just the right time or play into a promotion that's going on in a certain country or a certain region. It's fascinating. It's a big landscape.
Yeah, actually, that's not to get off subject, but that is a great point. We've got a guest post coming in about, I think, 2 months on Kindlepreneur, where the guy's talking about how you optimize your book for international sales. And yeah, there's one dude who's just totally raking it, by making sure he is the #1 bestseller in France and in India, and not just going for .com. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. But one of the things my team and I are working on is that we're actually creating software to really help out with this whole trying to find, niche areas where people can go to. And the key is that with the software, it's called KTP Rocket. What people can do is they type in their book idea, and the software will immediately tell you all the different things that people type in Amazon, like we talked about, right? The suggestion tool. It'll list all those out. And then it'll immediately tell you how many searches per month on Google. People type in that exact phrase into Google. And we've even created a way to be able to tell you how many people per month on Amazon type that in. And finally, it'll give you all the other data, but it will ultimately tell you whether or not it's too competitive or if it's easy. And my favorite part is it will give you the average amount of money earned per day for books that rank for that term. So immediately you can validate, through the software, just, how many people are typing this in, if books are making money for that, and if you can rank for it.
Is that sign behind you? Is that like a coming soon announcement?
No, I'm not going to lie.
KTP Rocket to me.
I totally stole that. Well, I didn't steal. I bought the rights to it. That rocket. That was actually an original piece of artwork I made like years ago. But yeah, that's basically it. It should be, we've got the alpha, and so we're going to be doing beta testing probably for the next couple of weeks, but I think by the time this comes out, I think it should be about ready for launch, but I'm not going to rush it. I want this thing to work, perfectly. And so we've got a lot of great people. I mean, Steve Scott's going to be one of my beta testers, as you were talking about. And so we'll have it out there, polish that cannonball, but it'll work for both PC and Mac, and I'm excited. I can't wait. Even if it doesn't sell, I'm excited to have something that's going to do all that work for me in like seconds instead of like hours and hours and days and days.
I love it. So is that the result of what you may have been doing manually before, and all of the research maybe programmed into a spider or something that's looking through and starting to put that information into presenting it back in with some of those metrics, especially the one how much you can make as a ranking? I think that's exactly how we author or aspiring author.
Yeah, that's exactly how we did it. Was, I just tried to bottle up exactly what I do. I mean, my process involved spreadsheets and tracking and going back and looking at things and having to do this. I used to be a nuclear engineer, so when I say I'm a math guy, I'm a math guy, and I had these equations to be able to kind of convert, because there's really nobody telling you some of that information. So to be able to pull data in and I'll be completely honest, I'll have a whole page set up on KTP Rocket showing you how we created these, these metrics, because Amazon doesn't tell you how many people per month. So we found a way to actually create a very good solid number that represents based off of searches.
That's fantastic. Is that so for everybody watching, is that something that people can learn more about at Kindlepreneur, or is there going to be a separate site for that? How can people learn about this? It might even be ready in beta by the time this is going live. So maybe you can share where everybody can go and find out about KTP Rocket.
Yeah, ktprocket.com. Right now we have it where you can actually sign up, and I'm giving people kind of a behind the scenes. I don't know if anybody of you ever wanted to learn what it's like to create software and be a part of a software team, but we're also, that's where we're looking for beta testers, so you could get a free copy. And if you go there and it's no longer a sign up page, but an actual full page, then it means it's online and ready to go. So.
That's awesome. I'll link that up on the underneath this video and in the members portal for everybody that joins with the VIP Author Success Pass. And we'll track that, because that's something I definitely want to share with people, not only during this summit, but that sounds like an extremely valuable tool. It's something I want to use. Have you thought about how you're going to release that in terms of pricing it, or is it going to be subscription, or is it standalone software?
It's funny. I had so many people tell me that I'm an idiot for doing this, but no, it's going to be a one-time fee. I hate subscriptions. I don't know. It's just my thing. And so no, it's a one-time fee of $67. So, and we're going to launch it. We're not going to put it as kind of like, hey, only these 2 weeks. We're going to have it out there. I think, we've already got some really big websites that are excited to talk about it and, feature it in articles. So you'll see it. And you'll definitely, if you go to Kindlepreneur, we'll have a lot of tutorials. I'm a huge fan of teaching people how to use something because it's just software, if you don't know how to use it, but it's a tool when you do. And so we're going to have videos. We're going to have how-tos, PDFs. Yeah, we're going to go all out on that. So
I love that. Sounds like a really great project. And I just like your whole approach to, not only just creating something amazing, but making sure that you've really created all the resources so that people can utilize it and put it into practice for themselves. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't call you an idiot by any stretch, nuclear physicist turned book hacker. But it's ironic, isn't it, that you want to do just a one-time fee for KTP Rocket, but you do enjoy getting those monthly consistent revenues from your book sales.
Yeah, that's true. You look at it and it's one of those things where I'd rather have a product that is, people love and it gets out to more people than to make it into something where, people have to be like, I didn't use it this month. That was like a waste of money. And I don't want people to have that negative connotation. I mean, most people aren't writing a book a month, right? So that subscription base, just people are going to feel like they just wasted their money on my software because they forgot to cancel their subscription until the next time they do research. And that's something I don't want to be associated with. I don't want people to feel they wasted their money.
No, that's a very valid point. Of course, I'm thinking of it from a publishing perspective where, we have a number of books and many more coming out and now many authors that are, 2 books and moving into 3 books into our relationship. That's a tool that I will certainly be using. So excited about that. And, maybe as we start to wrap this up, this has been such a fascinating discussion, and I appreciate you, Dave, for coming in. What sort of advice, if some parting words, some words of inspiration for people out there that are, considering writing a book or thinking about writing a book and wondering, if there's really an opportunity to make money from the book itself? I know one of the themes of this summit is how to leverage your book to build a business and brand, but you're one of the, you're probably in the minority, perhaps, of people on this summit who are actually making a large, consistent income from books themselves. So what would you say to the person out there who's looking at, thinking about getting into writing, maybe a little bit confused on where to start, and wants to know if it's actually going to be worth their time?
Well, one of the things I see a lot of book writers do, or the mistake they make, is that they will write the book and then they'll finish writing it and then they'll be like, all right, it's time to start marketing. It's like, no. The day you decide you want to write this book is the day you start marketing it. I think it's one of the most powerful things you can do because it does a couple of things. One, as you're writing the book, you're learning where your market is, okay? You're learning about who they are. You're learning about their pain points or what they do, what they hate or like. And this is great for fiction as well. The don't do that, phase, as I call it. And at the same time, you can start to create that following, those fans, those people that you can say, hey, type this into Google, to Amazon and find my book. You can create the following as you go. Where you find you lose out is when you try to do that after writing the book. And then you're like, okay, now what do I do? I have also found that working with my market while writing helps me to write a better book. So not just for a marketing aspect, but you're getting their input. You're finding out that, hey, we don't like it when we hear it this way, but we love it this way. Or here's some examples of things that were done right. That's just incredibly important. Not just for selling, but for creating good content.
Absolutely. I'm reminded of one of the other interviews I did with a guy named Jonathan Dragon, who has a similar type of approach, actually only similar in the sense that he does a lot of research before writing a book, and he's focused on specific topics. But he said that he'll go and actually buy the top 5 books in the niche that he's investigating, read all of them, and then actually read the 5-star reviews and the 1-star reviews for the book. And that's what he says, the 1-star reviews for the book, especially for the top selling books in that category, in that niche, is what gives him the final piece of the puzzle on what to include in his book, coupled with a few other important things like cover design and positioning, like what you called the Starks model. He said that finding out what people who have read the book and didn't like something strongly enough to leave a 1-star review, he says, well, I'm just going to include that in mine. And he does a few chapters on some of the main points that people thought were missing, and has had a pretty consistent success with that strategy. So,
yeah, absolutely. One example for fiction, for any of the fiction writers out there, just in case, I was reading a Star Wars book, and sure enough, I started reading the reviews, and I found that people were just destroying this book because the author used normal Earth terms that would never be used for a place that doesn't have Earth, or something like that. And I'm like, what? But man, did they just grill them over it. And so I was like, oh man, well, if I ever write that epic sci-fi military book, I'm going to make sure to tell my editor to ensure I didn't use any Earth terms, just in case. So it's just eye-opening, the things that people pick up on and things that drive them to madness, to give that 1 star, and just destroy your book. So yeah, I think the blueprint to success is right there.
Yeah, and I think, the point that you just mentioned about from the moment you're starting to write that book, maybe even before, the marketing is taking place. And marketing can also be just communication with who would be that target market. If whoever had written that book on Star Wars had any communication with his potential readers before launching it and getting creamed, then that probably would have become very apparent early on, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Well, look, thanks so much, Dave. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I hope everybody that's been watching this has gotten a lot out of it as well. Do you want to sort of take us home with any final words of wisdom and let everybody know where we can find out more about you? And if you want to plug any of your books, you're welcome to.
Sounds good. Well, one thing I like to tell people is that you can contact me at kindlepreneur.com on my contact page. One of the rules that I have is that my VAs don't respond. I respond to all emails. So if you guys have any questions, comments, constructive comments, hopefully, or anything, just shoot me an email and I'll be more than happy to reply personally.
Excellent. Yeah. And make sure to check out KTP Rocket too, and we'll link that up for everybody that is interested in that. I know I count myself among them. Dave, thanks so much. I know it's early over there, halfway around the world, and really appreciate you. And look forward to many more fascinating discussions like this in the future.
Thanks, Jesse. And again, thank you for having me here. It's been great.
My pleasure. And we'll see you all on one of the next interviews for Book, Business, and Brand Building Summit. I'm Jesse Krieger, Dave Chesson, signing off. See you soon.